Building community can look like a lot of different things. It could be a Facebook group. It could be people that are just following you on social media. It could be people on your email list. It could be your monthly giving program. Community can look very different. And it just really is in alignment with what your organization is and does to determine how you build and set up your community. But one thing we know is that community is really important. It's important to have that connection and for people to feel like they are a big part of the solution, and that by giving dollars, they understand exactly how that's being used and how they can still be a part of it beyond just the gifts that they're giving. So today we have Paul Gowder as our guest to talk all about how you can work on building that community and how you can use it in preparation for your year-end giving campaign. Paul Gowder is the owner and founder of powwows.com, which has been the leading online community celebrating Native American arts and culture for the past 25 years. Paul's techniques and skills have enabled him to build one of the largest and most engaged online communities in the world. Paul helps other entrepreneurs navigate the successes and pitfalls of building an online business through his public speaking and consulting services. You can learn more about Paul by visiting paulgowder.com, and we'll, of course, have everything linked up in the show notes for you. Now, community, like he says in his bio, is not just about creating it. It's about fostering and nurturing it and really making people feel involved and included. So I think you're going to like this episode and the tips and tricks that he shares with you about how to build an authentic and real community that thrives and builds and engages and gets people coming back for more, because that's what we want, right? We want to create these raving fans that are going to go out and help spread the word. And it starts by really having a thriving community. As I mentioned before, there's so many different ways that you can do this. We talk about a few in this episode, but really get creative and think about who you are, the work you do, the personality of your brand and your company, and how you can bring people in and go alongside you. So before we get into this episode, it is brought to you by our digital marketing therapy sessions. These are one-on-one sessions with me, and they're so much fun. I love connecting with you and helping you work through something that you're feeling stuck on. Whether it's what type of community rollout is best for you, how to get people into that community, how to share, what content should you be creating, is it in person or online, all of the questions that you're probably going to have after this episode. A digital marketing therapy session is a great way to work through some of the plans you put together so we can help you make it a raving success. Head on over to thefirstclick.net/office hours to book your time with me. I can't wait to chat with you and learn more about your plans for your incredible community. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each month, we dive deep into a digital marketing or fundraising strategy that you can implement in your organization. Each week, you'll hear from guest experts, nonprofits, and myself on best practices, tips, and resources to help you raise more money online and reach your organizational goals. Hello, everybody. Please join me in welcoming Paul Gowder to the podcast. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate having the time and looking forward to talking with you today.
Yeah, community is a conversation that I love and talk about often, so I think this will be a whole lot of fun. But before we kind of really jump into things, like, why is, community and community building and kind of wrapping your arms around those that want to join alongside you, why is that something that you find passionate about, or you find passionate and love to talk about?
So a couple of things there. One, I feel like now with social media that there's so much emphasis on the word community, but we're not really doing it. We're letting the social networks kind of create these what looks like community on paper, but is not really. And for me, the community has been a vital part of what we do at powwows.com from the very beginning. So it's always been a part of who we are, how we do things, and really the strength of our whole business is the community. Community is not a Facebook group. Community is not a Facebook page. Community is the people that feel like they're part of, something bigger, and they feel that bond to you and to each other. So yeah, it's been very important for us.
Well, and community, to your point, has kind of become a buzzword.
Yes.
kind of like, and I think it's also something that, we talk a lot about how we're tracking our marketing and our growth. And, community can also be a place where we get wrapped up in vanity metrics. So to your point about Facebook groups and whatnot, we can say our community is 10,000 people strong, but that doesn't mean that they're an engaged group of people.
Right.
So I love that you mentioned that right off the bat, that, the goal is to build a community of people that care, not just to build a community.
Right. Right. And, I'll here's, as far as Facebook groups goes, our Facebook group is 120,000, I think, right now. And it's really interesting to me to watch it. And we'll post something about, hey, there's an upcoming powwow. Here's the latest information. And there's people in our Facebook group, even though they can see it in the name, you can see it when you join, they don't even know that our powwows.com, the website, what we do is even associated with the Facebook group. So yeah, Facebook group is not the only place you can kind of have community. And sometimes it doesn't even get associated with your community, depending on how, because these algorithms are so weird now. People join these communities and they don't even know what they're joining, right?
Well, and let's talk about different ways that you can build community, because you've talked about Facebook groups. But, community can look like a bunch of different things. It can look in person. It can look online in various capacities. It can look, even just in one-on-one conversations. Like, how have you seen different types of communities kind of grow and thrive?
Yeah. So one of the things I like to tell people is that community doesn't live in any one place. Community is anybody who feels that connection to your brand, your business, whatever. A great example of that, last week, I went to the Taylor Swift concert with my daughter.
And you survived.
I did. Just a masterclass on performing, right? But the 70,000 people that were there with us in that stadium, probably most of them were not part of a Facebook group. Probably most of them weren't on her email list, but they all feel like they are Swifties and part of this big community. And I think we got to keep that kind of thing in mind, is no matter what touch point they come to your business, treat them like they're part of your community, and they'll get that feeling regardless of where they're coming from or how they're interacting with you.
Yeah, we feel that I did an episode a few months ago with my daughter, because she's a huge K-pop fan, and K-pop does a very similar thing to what Taylor Swift has done in building community around who they are with, millions of people. But
Right.
If you talk to any singular person, they feel a personal connection. They don't feel like they're one of the millions, or. So yes. I think that's really cool.
Something I told my wife when after we got back from the show is, because of TikTok and everything else, the people in that stadium knew exactly what she was going to say when she said it. But when she said things like, hey, did anybody make extraordinary effort to be with us today? The people in that audience felt like it was the first time they had heard it, and that she was talking to them, because they feel that connection, and it's an amazing thing when you can create that type of community. Wow. It was crazy to watch.
Well, and so let's stay on that topic, in that, I think a lot of times we as nonprofit organizations feel like either building community is super cumbersome because we have to have all these one-on-one conversations, or we have to do all this outreach, or we feel like if we're doing it digitally, we're not making real, authentic connections with people. So I think this Taylor Swift piece is kind of an interesting example to kind of ask this question, but how can we show up as brands to still make that authentic connection with people, even if it's not in a one-to-one kind of setting?
I think there's a few things you can do. And this is what we do at powwows.com, is when, regardless of what I'm messaging people on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, writing a post or writing an email, I talk directly to my audience. I talk to them one-on-one. I try not to say things like, open an email address or open an email message and say, hey, everybody, because then you're not going to feel it. I try to talk directly one-on-one, so that the reader or listener, if we're on a podcast or whatever, is feeling that one-on-one connection, like you were just saying. So I talk directly to them. I try to be very personal, conversational. It's a lesson that I've had to, I keep having to learn it over and over again, but and keep reminding me. But when you do that, people feel that, right? People want to be special. And so like on a podcast, a friend of mine and business coach told me this long ago, if you're on a podcast or a live show and you can mention people by name, whether they sent you a message or they left you a comment, that alone will build that one-on-one connection, because everybody wants to, have that moment on a show that they care about that feels like they are a part of it. And that's one way you can do it too, is, mention people by name, do a post where you're doing like a mailbag segment and say, hey, Sam from North Carolina asked me this question. Thanks so much, Sam. Here's my answer to you. Those kind of things, the more ways you can interact one-on-one, it really, really does build that feeling of that relationship with people.
Well, I think you see that with a lot of YouTubers, in that they'll say their call to action is, subscribe to our channel and we'll shout you out in a future video, because right. I think that to your point, they see that value. And I think what's super cool about that people don't understand is that even if I'm not the person being shouted out in that moment, it shows me that they care about the people that are engaging with them. So even though it might not be me, I'm still like, oh, that's kind of super cool. They're paying attention to the people that are asking the questions, that are subscribing to the channel, that are engaging with the brand.
Right. And to, just beat this horse, going back to Taylor Swift, every concert, she picks one person to come up and get a hat from her, right? But everybody in that stadium and everybody on TikTok the day after, they weren't that person, but they watched that video. They are super engaged with it. They're cheering for that one person. And they, hey, that could have been me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the importance of community building being a part of what we do all the time, because we know as nonprofits, at some point you're going to make an ask, right? You're going to ask for a donation. That's a typical progression. Nobody's surprised by that. But how can kind of working on this community building year round help us make those, maybe, we're gearing up for year-end campaigns when this episode's right. being published. So how can we kind of think about that year round so that when we come to that year-end giving campaign, we can have better success?
I read a book several years ago by Gary Vaynerchuk, Jab, Jab, Hook, or something like that. I can't remember the exact title. And he talks in that book is you deliver value. And then when you do have your ask, it can happen organically. It's not going to feel like the used car salesman pitch. It's not going to feel like a cold call email. If you can get people to feel that relationship, if they feel that connection with you, when you do have an ask, it's not a hard ask. It's an easy thing, because they already care about you. They want you to succeed. So you're not having to then because I feel like with a sale or, any kind of donation or contribution, first you got to educate them on who you are and why, and then you have to get them to make it. And so when you can build these relationships in these communities, you've taken care of the first part. Then it's just, hey, can you support me?
Yeah. Well, I think so much of it is building trust. And if somebody's going to be a part of your community, then you've built that trust with them. And then you are giving them a reason to then help support you. Like you just said, support you even more. So you talked earlier about when I send my emails, when I communicate with my community digitally, I'm talking to them as if they're an individual. So, do you kind of recommend then, as you're communicating some of these year-end pieces to try to get people to give, that you're also segmenting them out a little bit separately from maybe the general audience? Like, is there something to giving them exclusive access to certain things so they feel even more important and they're getting a special ask different than what maybe the general public is getting asked for?
Right. I think all those things can work. I've seen a lot of times where You don't have to give them because they feel the connection strong enough that supporting you is enough of a reward for them.
Mm.
And I think when you build a really strong community, that can be enough. So when we talk about whether you're building a Patreon or anything like that, where you can add those kind of benefits, I think it's important to remember maybe you don't need them at the lower tiers. Maybe it is just the higher tiers that you want to create that other benefit, or they're going to feel special in some way. I would concentrate on building the connection with people, and then letting that be the benefit for most people. And then it's the people at the top tiers that they're going to go above and beyond. Okay, so I am going to give them rewards.
Yeah. Well, that you just made it more simple and easy for people. So I love that. That's so great. So let's talk a little bit about, we've been talking a lot about different multi-generational community building and giving. And obviously, I think, and I think you'd probably agree that community is even more important for younger millennials and Gen Z, maybe even more so than the boomers and Gen X. So as we're approaching this community building, do we need to approach it differently for different generations, or are we just naturally going, if we're doing it the right way in alignment with our brand, that we will just attract the right people regardless? But this is a very long question, but that community building is important across generations.
It's important across generations, but it's important that you keep it going regardless of the platform. And that's what I see as far as the multi-generational that comes to my website and my community, is that the people that are interacting with us on Facebook or a Facebook group is a different generation usually than the people on TikTok or Instagram. So, that's when it's really important that you keep the same type of community building, the same type of relationship building across the platforms, so that you do meet your different generations where they are. I see, for me, like Facebook, for example, the people on Facebook are super loyal, and they will stay in our Facebook group and on our page for years and years. Mm-hmm. The people on our TikTok, they may not even click the follow button. They may just interact, and next week they may not even be on TikTok. They may not be watching TikTok. They may engage with us on Instagram. It's for them, for that younger generation. I don't feel like they are always consuming content the same way every day, every week. It changes so fast. So you have to keep doing the same things in every platform so that you make sure you're meeting them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, it'd be interesting to see in your Facebook group, like they're very loyal, they're sticking around, but I think sometimes we feel like the growth there isn't happening at the same level, which can be disheartening, but it's also going back to understanding the power and the value of where people are. And if they're fully engaged, but it's not growing and you're still seeing results, like that's okay. And that maybe it's time to start looking at other places where you can kind of increase that impact and build that community. I want to touch on kind of how we can pull people through to that one-on-one conversation, because ultimately that's the goal, right? We can have great conversation on a Facebook group or on a conversation thread in Instagram. But, how do you have any tips or ways that you can kind of create a conversation and kind of make people kind of come away from that social media platform and have a one-on-one conversation with you?
Yes. For me, the best conversations, the one-on-one connections are happening on my email newsletter. And people think I'm crazy sometimes when I say email is so important to us. I'm a firm believer in email. You mentioned the word segment earlier. We segment our email list in several different ways to capture our community in the kind of the interest categories that they want to be in. So, for example, I have a sequence called "What to Expect at Your First Powwow" for people that have never been to a powwow. So that one, in that series of emails, I ask questions to them. I ask for them to respond to me on different things. And I get, 10, 15 emails some days of people responding to those emails. And I'm able to then have these one-on-one conversations. And it's amazing. I mean, of course, after they write you one or two times, maybe you're not going to be pen pals forever with them through email. But I do have 4 or 5 people that continue to email me every week because they feel that, they want to continue that conversation. But even if you're able to get them to reply one time and you write them back, they're going to be a part of your community for a long time because then you've now established a one-on-one connection with them. So yeah, email is huge. Because one, you can own your list. You don't have to worry about these algorithms. And two, it's the best way to get that one-on-one.
You're speaking my language. I'm a huge believer in email marketing. Okay, so let's switch gears completely. And I want to because I think, some people might say, well, my audience is small. There's no way I can have a big enough community to really make impact. I don't really need to build a community. I would imagine that your community could feel limited by the growth opportunity within what you do and who you serve. But what would you say to people that feel like, well, there's no reason for me to start a community because the number of people that would want to join it are too small?
It's fine. Don't create a Facebook group, but continue to, like going back to what we said, if you do a live video, if you do a story, treat people that see that content as they're part of your big picture community. Treat them like they are a Swiftie. Don't make them feel like they have to join a community or they have to subscribe to your email list to be part of the cool club. Go ahead and, if they watch your video one time, talk to them, let them feel that belonging, and it's going to be okay. I think people do get caught up on you have to create a Facebook group or you have to do, have these certain things on social media. And it's okay if you don't, if it doesn't fit with what you're doing organically, then don't do it for now. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm all about you don't have to be on every single platform. Be on the one that works for you and do it well.
Yeah. Well, and I think community, again, is like what you make of it.
Yes.
So you can turn it into whatever you want, however you want. If we go back to Taylor Swift, nobody else has built a community like she has. She's done it in her own way, by her own rules. And that's part of the reason why I think it is so large and encompasses such a wide variety of people. But if you ask anybody else to try to duplicate exactly what she's done, it wouldn't work for them.
Right. It's not going to work for you necessarily, but you can take these lessons from her and remember to treat everybody like they're part of your community, regardless of where they are interacting with you.
Mm-hmm. So any other kind of tips or anything that you've learned along the way, like maybe things that you tried or didn't work? Like testing is such a part of, finding out what connects, but kind of any advice that you would want to share with people if they're just getting started?
Yes. Show up in your community. If like, for example, if you have a Facebook group, especially in the beginning, don't be a silent part of it. Be an active part of it. At some point you probably, as the admin or the moderator, don't have to be in there every day, but in the beginning you do. And you need to be in there nurturing that community. Same thing if you're growing your community on email. You need to be showing up there and talking to them personally, directly, not just blasting them with the latest blog post or your latest offering, your new t-shirt or whatever. Don't keep blasting that content at them. Talk to them, be there for them. And it's all about the nurturing, right? And then the rest of it will come organically.
Well, and how important is it to really just ask them for their feedback? Like, I think a lot of times as organizations, yes, we know we're going to make a donation ask. We know we're going to share it. Just like you said, we're going to blast them with all the stuff. But like, how much a part of building that community is even just reaching out and saying, well, what do you need? How could we support you? Because I think we tend to not do that as organizations because we make it mostly about us.
I totally agree. I think you should survey your audience often. But more importantly is, again, if you're showing up in that Facebook group, right, and you're in there reading the comments, you need to be keeping a notepad of what are the questions that keep coming up over and over again. If there's if you've got a long discussion going on, what are the topics that keep coming up? Maybe those are things that you do need to spend a little more time clearing up for people, or it's a part of the education process or the onboarding or whatever into your ecosystem. Look at what they're talking about, and there's where you need to go, and that's how you need to move forward. Whatever content or whatever your marketing plan is, look at what they're asking about, and those are the kind of things you're going to want to talk about.
Yeah, perception is reality, right? And sometimes that's hard to face.
Yep.
Okay, so the last thing I kind of want to touch on today is, if we've worked really hard, for a few months or a year, whatever, and we're building this amazing community, and we know we've got, I think naturally a handful of strong leaders will emerge from your community, or people that are more active or whatnot. How can we engage with them to help us kind of launch or build or get excitement for a year-end giving campaign?
Again, I have to go back to, if you've built a strong community, then they are already invested, so that when you do come out with your big thing or your cornerstone content, the thing that is so vital and core to what you do, they are going to want to be a part of that with you. And so it's when you build that kind of thing, like I do a lot of giveaways on the websites. And when we do our big ones, like for Native American Heritage Month, the audience is already invested. They're already wanting to be a part of it. So they're naturally telling people about it. Yeah. They're getting excited about it. I'm getting emails before we started of, hey, when's this going to start? When are we doing it? If you can build the buzz, if you can build the excitement, build the engagement, they're going to do some of that marketing for you without you even having to ask. And again, it has to be, make sure whatever your big ask is, your big campaign, make sure you're doing it in a way that, again, is that one-on-one connection. I see so many people, just making these, like a t-shirt sale, right? They're just posting a picture of the t-shirt without trying to make it.
There's no story. There's no connection.
Yeah. There's no connection there. Yeah. It's just, hey, here's the design, buy it. You've got to do these things a little more organically. And sometimes it's going to take some thought, especially when you're first starting out and you're not sure what resonates with your community and where the connections are. You might have to put a little bit of thought and work into this, but that's what's going to be successful, right? Is when they're already invested, so that when you make the ask, they want to be a part of it.
So I love it, because it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is it takes, kind of the consistency of showing up regularly, talking to people, whether it's in mass email or in a Facebook group, as if they're your best champion already. Right. And then I think also to your, to kind of pull a lot of what you said together, paying attention to the comments and what people are saying and sharing, because that's going to help guide you on how you show up when you make the ask, because that's really going to tell you what they care about, what they're nervous about, what they're excited about, or what questions they have. Right.
I can't tell you, the number of articles that I've generated because I keep seeing the same questions over and over again. I just did one a couple of weeks ago. I think we started working on it a couple weeks ago. We published it this week. I kept seeing the same question, the same misunderstanding. It's like, at some point it got through my thick skull of, hey, maybe we need to spend some time talking about this, right? It's the same thing getting asked over and over. You got to be there and show up for those, and you'll see them. They'll start emerging.
I love that, because I think sometimes we work so hard to try to come up with things where really it's already smacking us in the face. If we just paid attention to what the market and our community is telling us, then it's like they lay it out for us. We just need to listen.
Right. And I can give you an example. So probably for years and too long, I didn't recognize this question, but I would get even just a comment of somebody would subscribe to our newsletter and they would respond to one of these segments, right? And I would get a response like, hey, when are you bringing a powwow to my state? Or how do I get you guys to come to my state? And it took me a long time to realize one of the things they don't understand, and the misconception is that powwows are all independently run events. There's not one. It's not like a rodeo or a Taylor Swift concert. It's not an organized tour that goes around. Each one of these is its own entity. And so we wrote an article about that, and we kind of explained that. So now I have a way to help people understand that better. And it did. It took me a long time to realize, there's a better way to help people with this, instead of, just keep pointing them to, hey, here's the calendar for your state. It's let me try to make this a little more clear for you. So yeah.
That's so good and such a good reminder. I love the book by Marcus Sheridan, They Ask You Answer, because that's exactly what it's about, where it's like, the content you're putting on your website, the content you're talking about on your social, the way you're building community around your brand is just simply answering the questions that your market is giving you. It's just that simple.
Yes.
Well, Paul, I think such good inspiration, such good ways to think about how we're building community and thinking about community differently. And I think it's really I shouldn't say oversimplified. It is a simplified approach, which I love. It's just showing up and being you, but with a little bit of thought and strategy and consistency and how you navigate what that looks like. Any other kind of last words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Just be there for your community. Be yourself in the community. Don't try to be a brand. Just be yourself. People want to engage with you, not a brand. And so be as personable as you can.
I love that. Well, Paul, if people want to learn more about powwows, powwows.com, obviously you can go there. But if people want to learn more about you and kind of see your community and all the great things you've done, how can they do that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I would love for you out there listening to come to a powwow. They are open to the public. It is a place where you will get to experience and connect with Native American culture in real life. It's amazing. You can go to powwows.com/powwows near me, and that'll help you find a powwow close to you. They are in every state, in almost every Canadian province. So there's one close to you somewhere. If you want to learn more about what I do as far as email marketing and building community, I've got a website, paulgowder.com, and I'd love to talk with you and help you build your community. So hit me up.
I love that. And we'll link up everything in the show notes and the resources that were shared today at thefirstclick.net/226. But I really hope that you will take advantage of building community so that you have a much easier year-end giving campaign, if not this year, then next year. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your experience.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Paul for joining me today. It was such a great conversation, and I love thinking about community and how we can utilize it to really have the best possible outcomes for our organization and our year-end giving campaigns. You can check out all the resources and information about Paul in the show notes at thefirstclick.net/226. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you are getting excited and ramped up for your year-end giving campaign. I know it's a crazy, stressful time of the year, but you got this. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss out on a single episode. Leave us a review while you're there. Would love it to help us get in front of more and more nonprofits that could use support with their year-end giving or any of their other digital marketing strategies. And of course, make sure you watch us on YouTube if you want to see video versions of these episodes. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.